Part two, picking up where I left off at. All right. So yeah, so if you get the work by Dr. David M Hotep called "The First Americans Were Africans," all right. Now, not African in the sense that we're talking about continental African immigrants today, and not Africa in the sense of the 54 subdivisions today. No. When Dr. David M Hotep titled his work "The First Americans Were Africans," he's talking about the African phenotype scientifically. All right, because in science there's three phenotypes: the Africoid or the African, the Caucasoid or the Caucasian, or the Mongoloid, meaning the peoples of Mongolia, meaning the Far East, meaning Asians, right? So in science, these are the three phenotypes. All right, so that way we don't confuse things. But anyway, here's the work. Here's what it looks like. Let me show you guys. All right. The first Americans were Africans, documented evidence. Dr. David M. Hotep, PhD. All right. And the photo, as you can see, is someone of the African phenotype. The photo was from the Natural History Museum in London. All right. This is by a PhD. All right. This is a peer-reviewed work. All right. Let me show you guys something. All right. As you can see, this picture on the cover. It says that the picture on the cover was taken during the voyage of the HMS. HMS is an acronym for Her Majesty's ship, all right, meaning the Queen of England, meaning the English aristocracy. HMS Challenger on the 1872-1876 voyage, funded by the British government for scientific purposes. This indigenous man's picture was taken at the most southern tip of South America in Tierra del Fuego. All right, tierra meaning terrestrial, meaning the land. The expedition is believed to have been the first to carry an official photographer. This picture can be found in London's Natural History Museum today. All right. The first Americans were Africans, documented evidence by Dr. David M. Hotep. All right, and this is the updated version, as you can see, updated and expanded down there at the bottom. Now, all right, so the reason that I was showing this particular work that I have in my library, which I have a bunch of different works, but I'm not going to get into that right now. But the reason that I pulled that out is just to show you that we've never denied as Moors, all right, that our people was here. In fact, in the conscious community, all right, with the various subdivisions, I guess, or the various groups that we have, we've never denied that. And that's not something that we're arguing. But if you're claiming to be an expert and you don't have this work that I just showed, and if you're not rethinking the information, if you're not using this information to uplift and unify your community, if you're using it to be divisive just because you want YouTube fame and because you want to be a professional charlatan, that's problematic. All right, but anyhow, the reason that I showed that work is because in that work, Dr. David M. Hotep drives home the fact that the cultures on this side, all right, the indigenous populations of the Americas, who were in fact of the African phenotype originally, all right, these were the first Americans. Then later we know that there were a people who came across what's called the Bering Strait, all right, as they were hunter-gatherers. So they came across the Bering Strait from Asia down into the Americas. Now you have federally and state-recognized Indian tribes who will deny the Bering Strait, what they're calling a hypothesis, but it's already been proven. But they'll say it's a hypothesis. They're trying to deny it because then it shows that they're not original here and that even they came from the old world. So they're fighting tooth and nail to get that re-examined, I guess. But anyhow, my original point was that in this work, Dr. David M. Hotep tells you that the first Americans who were of the African phenotype, all right, which they were an indigenous population here, and the indigenous populations of West Africa were one and the same. The cultures mirrored each other. The spearhead tips, the way that they farmed, their religious allegories, even though they weren't religious in the sense of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. They had pagan traditions, but the traditions on this side were the same as those traditions on the other side. All right. Dr. David M Hotep gets into how, if I'm not mistaken, he talks about how some Egyptian mummies found crops that are native to this side over in Africa and vice versa. All right, they found different metals and different irons from over on that side over here. So my point is that the cultures are one, which shows that we was always on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. All right, whether you were one of the various groups that held pagan traditions, or if you were of Islam, all right, the Moors. And we know, because I spoke of in a earlier video, that the European Christian nations took over the trade routes from the Moors, which is true. Because if you read Leo Weiner's book called Africa and the Discovery of America, which I have in the other room, and I should have got it, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima's work, They Came Before Columbus. And then there is a work by the famous author called James Reston Jr., who's the son of famous New York Times contributor James Reston. See, you brothers, man, these brothers don't be worth the time. Y'all not on the level. But James Reston Jr. wrote a work called Dogs of God, Columbus, the Inquisition, and the Defeat of the Moors. If you don't have that in your library, you can't talk Moorish history. You can't talk Moorish history. But he even talks about Columbus having charts, all right? A chart is a sea map, all right? It's a map of the seas. Columbus talks about his charts being charts that were formerly owned by the Moors after the Moors were overthrown. So Columbus's charts to sail to the New World was from the Moors. See, it's documented proof that there's always been trade and ties between the Old World and the New World prior to European colonization. But then you get agent provocateurs like this guy who are only into this information for selfish reasons. They want to be self-serving. Ego, popularity, and is not using the information to uplift the people. But then he's arguing with Judge Joe Brown, calling him a sellout and boule. No, you're boule based on your activity, because you ain't raising the people with the information. You are trying to cause division with it. And then not only that, you never hear these guys talk about the end game as far as claiming to be indigenous or aboriginal or autochthonous. All right? What's the end game? All right? Because it's one thing to trace your lineage, in which these people haven't done their genealogy back past the 1600s. And in the 1600s, obviously that's before the United States of America was established. This is back when these were navigation companies they started out as. Then they became trading posts on the land, like the Dutch, so to speak. Then they became colonies, and then ultimately a united front. So they started out as corporations. For the ones that say corporations are bad, which we're going to cook you on that. Corporations are not bad, because corporations are countries in its infancy. The United States, what became the United States, was navigation corporations, all right, and adventure corporations and companies, which became colonies on the land in Africa and here in the Americas, which is both our ancestral estates. They became trading posts, then colonies, then a united front as a country. All right, so anyway, back to my point. These guys try to act like corporations are bad, and then they'll try to say that the United States is a corporation, and that's false in the way that they mean it. Like, they mean it as like a corporation underneath of the tax code. All right, there's a C corporation and there's a S corporation, and the United States is neither. It's not the same it's not the same corporation as like a Rite Aid or a CVS or a Burger King. It's a different type of corporation, and I'll show you some case law that gets into what I'm talking about. All right, but it's these guys who are problematic. These guys like Dane, Calloway, and all of this misinformation that they push. All right, and yeah, so just picking up where I left off at again, moving forward, Columbus's hero was Marco Polo. And if you know anything about Marco Polo, all right, he was an explorer, but he explored via land caravan and not by ship, all right? To the Far East, India, he mapped a lot of places. And Marco Polo was a Genoan. He was from Genoa, Italy, just like Christopher Columbus. So that was Columbus's hero. So this is why Columbus wanted to sail. And again, Columbus's intent was to go to India and China with the people in academia called Cathay, because his hero Marco Polo did it. But see, the history goes in two different directions with this, because you have some historians who say Columbus wanted to reach Cathay, which is China/India over in that region, by sailing vessel, and that he bumped into the Americas by accident, and they thought they were in India, so they started calling it the Indies. All right, and they started calling the people Indians. But then you have the historians who say that Columbus already knew that there was a land a few leagues to the west before you got to India. Some historians say that, and some historians say both, right? All right, in James Reston Jr.'s work, Dogs of God, Columbus, the Inquisition, and the Defeat of the Moors, he says that Columbus wanted to reach the Far East by sailing vessel, and then he thought that the Americas was India, so then they called it the Indies. All right, so you have those that say both. All right, so it gets confusing at times, but the fact of the matter is that Columbus did not come here or didn't have the intent in cahoots with the Moors to enslave the indigenous populations here. That's that's misinformation. All right, so I wanted to clear that up. Also, in Columbus's diaries, if you get them, and if you get this James Reston work, which would corroborate this information, where you could cross-reference it, Columbus and the Spanish crown was looking for what they were calling the kingdom of Prester John, all right, which is one of the Europeans' various mythologies. All right, so this was something that they made up. Prester John wasn't an original person. And in fact, from Prester, you get the term presbyter or the Presbyterian church. So Prester just means preacher or pastor, all right? So they was looking for what they called the kingdom of Prester John, which they thought that it was a so-called black Christian people looking to merge their kingdoms with. So in saying that, what I'm saying is that they already knew that you was all over the world. All right, in the Americas, in the Far East, in Africa. All right, and so let's continue on, because I don't want to reach my mark, and then I haven't even let this goofy talk. All right, so let's continue on.
The definitions of the term Moor, the original definitions for the term Moor, go back to, I encourage you to utilize Webster's English Language Dictionary, Noah Webster's English Language Dictionary, 18.
See, he's already starting off wrong. He's already confused in what he's talking about. First of all, in order to understand the linguistic history, I think that's what he's trying to say, of a word Moor or of any other word, you want to get what's called a unabridged dictionary. Unabridged, because something that's abridged means it's disconnected, it's separated. So unabridged dictionary. You can get a Random House. You can get a Webster's. All right, so I think that's what he's trying to talk about, a unabridged dictionary. All right.
Page 28, you can have them, or you can go back to his very first one, which was 1807. and they both verified that.
Verify what?
I do have a couple of, like I have the original Black's Law Dictionary, Volume 1.
Now he's talking about he's got a Black's Law Dictionary, Volume 1. And see, here's the problem with that. In the Black's Law Dictionary, Volume 1, Volume 2, which I have, Volume 3, and Volume 4, and it's not volume, by the way, all right, but using his language. They're in editions, 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 4th edition, first edition, which the first and 2nd edition has the Reno years in there, which don't start till 1066. And see, there's a reason for that, which these guys don't get into. All right, but let's continue on. Oh, so what I was going to say was the legal definition of the term Moor, which I think this is where he think he wants to go, but he's getting confused. The legal definition of the term Moor has not changed from the 1st to the 4th to the current edition, which I think they're up to 13. All right, let's continue on.
Continue to that. I'm going to put that on screen too to show everybody. And it was a very, very good find. It was one of my prized things that I'm so glad that I got a hold of, because very rare can you catch the original. And I have the original, okay? I have the original copy of that. And even in the Black's Law Dictionary, Volume 1, it states very similar things, except for it details why the Romans called the Iberians a Moor. And it's because of, like, for example, you can actually attest to this if you're familiar with the story that, Christopher Columbus came over here with Iberians. And
these brothers are just so misinformed, it's not even funny. When the Black's Law Dictionary is defining the term Moor, it says that a Moor, by definition, is a bailiff times 100 on the Isle of Man. So basically, it's just saying status-wise what a Moor is compared to the European. All right. I think what Dane Calloway is confusing right now is the definition of the term Moor and the definition of free white person in the Law Dictionary, where it gets into the different groups that it is saying is a free white person status-wise. All right. I think that's what he's confusing. But let's continue on.
The reason why those Iberians were called Moors is because they were anchoring the ship. Now, the term...
No. The reason why people on the Iberian Peninsula, i.e. Spaniards, the Portuguese, the peoples of Andorra, and even Gibraltar. Gibraltar is a very small jurisdiction. Gibraltar, as in the Rock of Gibraltar, known in history as the Pillars of Hercules. All right, see, a lot of guys don't know that. But the reason that you'll see that in the definition of free white person, which is what I think this guy is really meaning to say he's struggling, is because the Moors reigned on the Iberian Peninsula for 700 years. Like the song by Stevie Wonder, 700 years educated by the Moors. All right. In 1492, you came upon the shore, 700 years educated by the Moors. It's because of the mixed marriages. The whole population, I mean, not now, obviously, because we are 500 plus years removed from 1492. But during that time, the population looked like who the conquerors were, which was us, all right, which was an African people, for lack of a better way to put it, Moors, all right. So this is why you'll see that included in the free white person definition. But let's continue on.
Moor can also be defined.
Oh, so when he gets into more having to do with anchoring or sailing, listen. So let's go back to it. Yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Christopher Columbus came over here with Iberians, and the reason why those Iberians were called Moors is because they were anchoring the ship. Now,
all right, so let me explain that, because he's lost. In the English language, there's 8 parts of speech. All right, there's pronouns, nouns, verbs, adjectives, interjections, conjunctions, a preposition. All right, so I named about 6 or 7. So the term more belongs to different parts of speech in our language. All right, more, the proper noun, and more the noun, and more the verb don't have the same linguistic history. All right, a verb is an action word. A noun is a person, place, thing, or idea. So more, as in sailing, as in mooring, doesn't have the same linguistic history as more the noun. All right, more, the verbiage, like the doing, is only going to go back to German. But more, the proper noun, is going to go back to ancient times. So they have 2 different linguistic histories. And then that should tell you that these terms have multiple meanings, and it's based on the history. It's based on who picked up the word. All right, meaning what European group picked up the word, and then through transliteration, what pronunciation they put on it, and then what definitions they apply to it. So when he's not breaking that down to you, I already know that he's not qualified. So more the noun, and more the verb, and more the pronoun not only have different meanings, but they belong to different parts of speech, and they have 3 different linguistic histories and 3 different functions. All right, one is capitalized at the beginning, one is not. The other 2 is not. So that's a dead giveaway. So more the person is capital, more the place is not, more the verb is not. Let's continue on.
The term more can also be defined as an anchor. Okay?
The term more cannot be defined as a anchor. So let me explain that, because I'm an ex-seafarer, all right? So I'm an ex-mariner. Like, I used to sail on U.S. flag vessels. Mooring is known as sailing, all right? Mooring and seafaring is interchangeable. And the reason that the Europeans during the Middle Ages used to call seafaring mooring is because it's the Moors that taught them how to navigate ships. I just talked about Columbus's sailing maps, which are known as charts in the sailing world, was from the Moors, because we traveled the 7 seas through trade winds and currents, which I'll show it to you. But mooring means seafaring, which is why when a ship gets tied up to the pier, the terminology that's used is that we're moored. Not in the civilian world as far as sailing goes, but in the United States Navy, they'll say moored, shift colors, meaning move the flags from one place to another. All right, so that's what mooring means, that the ship is secured to the pier or the dock. It has nothing to do with anchoring. You see, and this is your king. This is who you guys follow.
Okay? To a ship or a boat, meaning that it's holding that boat steady in one place while it's floating on water. Okay, so it's mainly a descriptive term describing those particular people.
See, he's lost. Now, I just told you that more is a verb, all right, a doing, all right. A verb is an action word, mooring, seafaring, and a noun, meaning a place, all right, and a person, a proper noun, all right. More is not a descriptive term in the English language. A descriptive term is an adjective. More is not an adjective.
People of that landmass, not this landmass, that landmass. And yes, of course, that was Latin. You know, same thing. It was called. That's why I said it was by the Moors mainly.
Here he go, Latin. Let me show you guys something, because I can't even wait to get to it. Let me show you guys something. Because he made the erroneous claim that the term Moor is from the Greeks, right? So let me show you guys something. Let me scroll down. And I'm using Wikipedia because this is where you beginners need to start at, all right? I'm not giving you the high explosives when you need the 101s first. All right, so look at this. All right, Moorish kingdom. All right, so it says Mauritania existed as a tribal kingdom of the Berber Mari people. In the 1st century, Strabo recorded the Mari. All right, look, see how it says Mari, then it says here Mopoi in Greek. So it's already showing you the transliteration. So it's already telling you, if you got half a brain, you can see that, all right, this is what the Mari people call themselves, and this is the Greek transliteration. It goes on to say, as the native name of the people opposite the Iberian Peninsula. This fool just told you a Moor is Iberian. Opposite the Iberian Peninsula. It says this appellation was adopted into Latin. All right, Romans and Greeks spoke Latin. Whereas the Greek name for the tribe was Marusi. Now, I said this in my Killer Priest podcast interview. I even hit young Pharaoh with this stuff during our debate. The Greek name for the tribe was Marusi. But here it says, again, let's go back to the top. Mauritania existed as a tribal kingdom of the Berber Mari people in the 1st century. Strabo recorded Mari. A different pronunciation in Greek, as you can see in parentheses, as the native name of the people opposite the Iberian Peninsula. Adopted into Latin, and the name was, and the name that the Greeks and Romans would use through transliteration is Marusi. So this should tell you that the Mari people named themselves, and through transliteration, the Roman put his own pronunciation on it, which Europeans have done all over the planet Earth since colonization. Like, we'll take Philadelphia, all right, which is where I come from. My family is a Philadelphia family. All right, my family is a Philadelphia family. So, we'll take Philadelphia for example. There are anglicized, meaning English, there are anglicized names of a lot of Algonquian words all over Philadelphia, like Susquehanna, Wissahickon, Wingahaken. You have Delaware. You have like, we'll get north, right? Like Matawan, Mechechen, all right? ETC. My point is that he's done this all over the world. But see, what happens is we are trained to give him so much credit. And that's our problem, especially problems with guys like this. All right, so let's continue on.
But yeah, it has nothing to do with America. And the reason why I'm trying to state this to you guys now, even though I have before, but the reason why I'm stating this to you guys now is because there's a lot of misconception going on. A lot of people want to gravitate towards.
The only misconception is this guy.
This movement, meaning the Aboriginal movement, or whatever you want to call it, the indigenous movement.
Nobody wants to gravitate to that movement. Simply, well, those of us that's really in the know, all right? To the untrained ear, you sound like you got some science. But to those of us that really know, we know. And we know that your whole demo is bitten and stolen from us. It's the Moors, as in members of the Moor Science Temple of America, all right? Before you had all these offshoot groups, we're the ones that used to teach and push and put out that our dominion and inhabitation was always on both sides. We're the ones that taught that. We're the ones that taught black isn't a nationality or a name that belongs to the human family or to the families of nations. We're the ones that taught that black is a tag that was put on you during the slavery era of time, and that its characteristics associated with determine that black doesn't have an ancient history in the linguistic history, and was a misnomer put on you to get you out of the status of heir. We taught that first. Now, fine. You don't want to be affiliated or associated with us? Fine. No problem. We don't care about that. But say where you got your bars from, goofy. Because you stole all our talking points. You stole our intellectual property. You keep hating on us. And it's because you know that without us, there is no you. But we're the ones that have taught that we've always been on both sides of the Atlantic, and that the culture on the other side of the Atlantic and here is one and the same. And we've always traded and traveled back and forth. Documented proof. And we got to stop this charade. All right? We're the ones that said we're not Negro, black, and colored. And why? First. We said it first. And this is the thing that I'm going to say, and that I'm going to end the video, because I'll be a whole hour correcting his shit, because that's just what I'm going to call it. Look at this fucking shithead. All right? So I'm going to say this. What's the end game of these guys just telling people that they're Aboriginal? What's the end game? Except for you want a following and some followers, and you want to be the biggest guy on the scene, the most popular guy on the scene. But what's the end game? How are you moving politically? What have you done interfacing with the three branches of government in this country? And the USA is a country, recognized the world over, recognized by the UN. All right, these goofballs have birth certificates from states that are member states of the USA. They have driver's licenses from these states that are member states. Don't let them fool you. They have social security cards where the red numbers on the back is going to say what Federal Reserve Bank and which state where the trust account, where that person's trust account under the straw man name is. All right, so the point that I'm making is that the United States of America is not going anywhere, and it's not just a figment of somebody's imagination. It's a very real, formidable thing, and it has a standing army. And you talking on the internet, you're not affecting that. You're not affecting change that way. But anyhow, how are you affecting change? All right, legislatively, interfacing with